So recently, everybody, I became aware of how just, like, I've been pondering, basically. I've been looking back at our discography, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
And I was like, oh, you know what? You know what a good idea will be? Let's check in on all these corners. Like, we have all these different corners. There should be 5 corners, right? 1 corner for each person.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the Cody corner, and he was in there doing something heinous to himself. I don't know what. I looked at the Chris corner, and he was there looking at Cody do something heinous to himself.
Oh my goodness.
John was there eating some tacos. Kyle's
That's
corner
okay.
was there. He was Heil Hitlering and
I was gonna say,
whatever
was there
he
like
does.
a red flag in the background?
Of course, I'm standing in my corner, but then I looked to my left. There was a corner there, and it was empty.
There's 6 corners?
I looked down again. I'm like, I'm in my corner. Kyle, John, Chris, Cody. Who's the 6th corner? I turn around again, and a pair of green hands wrap themselves around my neck.
Oh.
But then the green hand starts to trail down my chest and over my stomach and down my pants. And I
There's
turn and
heinous
look in the
acts.
mirror, and I see Ruth Bader Ginsburg getting fingered by Shulk.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh my god,
Oh,
I'm
no.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg? But then I snapped awake. Luckily. Here we are.
So that's odd that you would bring up a dream that you had recently. Actually, I guess it was a dream you woke up.
I hope it was a dream.
I had a really weird dream happen to me the other day.
Oh, I had a weird dream happen too.
I was I think it was like Saturday morning, and I was having just a normal dream, and I got a bout of sleep paralysis during the dream. I'm like, oh, that's kind
Rough.
of weird. And like, I don't know if I've talked about my sleep paralysis on the podcast before.
You
but
have.
Yeah, so
Dog-faced man.
Yeah, Dog-faced Man. Although I don't think Dog-faced Man, I was having sleep paralysis back then. Regardless.
No, oh, that was real?
That was a dream that I had, yes.
Oh, okay.
But in this case, my sleep paralysis has been much more sporadic recently, but this one hit me harder than most, and I actually got paralysis during the dream, and I thought I woke up from the dream, but the sleep paralysis continued, and I'm like, okay, this has been going on for a while now. I really should have been unparalyzed by now.
This is getting pretty fucking old, brain.
Yeah, and it got to a point where I was struggling to move so much that I felt myself, like, I had like an out-of-body experience where I felt myself move and like sit up and get out of bed, but then when I looked back, I was still laying in the bed, and I'm like, what is happening? And like, I go to move through my bedroom door, which is closed, and I just phased right through it. And I'm like, did I just log off the server in my sleep? Like, no joke,
If
I thought,
only.
am I dead right now? Did I just die? And this is just like the afterlife or something, or just my consciousness permeating throughout the material plane from now on. It was extremely vivid, but also no sound. And then I just walk out into my living room, and I phase through my balcony door onto my balcony, and then just phase down into the parking lot in front of my apartment building. And then I just started flying up higher and higher, and I see all the buildings in my apartment complex, and I just started getting higher and higher. And then I woke up for real. So, I don't know what that was. But
If you were actually funny and deserved to be on this podcast, you would have said, then I went out to my balcony and I saw Ruth Bader Ginsburg getting fingered by Shulk.
yeah, I guess that would have been better timing. And also a lie.
I think, Cody, you were astral projecting.
Yeah, I
He was
think
doing
so.
what?
Well, hold on. Before we just move on with that concept, do you really think that's real?
Do I really think what's real?
Astral projection.
I mean, if what I did sounds as close to what people describe astral projecting to be as, so I guess yes.
Have you guys heard of that story of, I think his name's Ingo Swann? He's like purportedly the best astral projector ever.
No.
No, I haven't heard about this man.
He was like back in like,
Like self-proclaimed, or somebody else said he was the best actor?
well, that's the thing. Back in the 80s, he apparently was working with the government, and like this is a real thing. They literally tried to just test, and I kind of understand this line of thinking. I mean, because if it's real, that's pretty amazing, and we should probably be the best at it because we're America.
Hell yeah.
So America was like, let's try and just see if this psychic bullshit is real.
Is this
is
like
this
men
and
who
Ingo
stare at
Swann.
stuff?
Who? Guys, you're all talking on top of each other.
Is this men who
Great
stare at goats?
A little bit after that.
Okay.
Like, that was a bit more, less tongue-in-cheek, I think, than this kind of shit was. This was stuff like, kind of like Ghostbusters. Remember the beginning of Ghostbusters when they had, like, a paranormal section of the university?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Imagine that, but the government was doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ingo Swann was apparently part of that. And this is a story that Ingo Swann told, and I don't believe a goddamn word of it, but it's an interesting story nonetheless. He said he was in a room with some government spook, and they were like giving him instructions, because you have to have somebody giving you prompts, apparently, when you are astral projecting and remote viewing and shit like that. And they're like, all right, we need you to go here, you look at this kind of stuff, and basically they were telling him to look at the dark side of the moon. So he does. And he's like, I see a base there. We seem to have made a base. Is that us? And the government spook didn't say anything. And he gets closer and closer, and he's like, these aren't humans. And then he's like getting really close, and he's describing the purported aliens. And then he's like, they're looking at me. They're looking right at me. And he starts freaking out, and they snap him out of it. And he's like, what was that? Did they see me? What was happening just then? And the government spook was like, pretty much the government spook was just like, that was crazy, huh? See ya. And that's Ingo Swann's story. I think he's full of shit.
Yeah, I don't think I would agree with that story either.
I mean, I would find it pretty interesting that a man who worked with the government astral projected, and you're doing the same.
That is interesting.
I mean, if astral projecting is just very vivid, lucid dreaming, like, okay, sure. Although I think the conceit with astral projection is that your spiritual form is in the real world, not a manifestation of the real world created by your mind.
I think that's the
What's
idea.
the difference?
Well, the idea, what he did was a dream. What I think people say astral projection is like you are literally able to view the real world while dreaming in real time. And not like a recreation of the world from your own mind. Basically, what I think Cody, like, it's like what Cody's saying is like Cody watched a movie, whereas astral projection would be like ghosting out into the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your dream definitely seems to have way more depth than mine did. Mine
What
was
was
a
your
nightmare
dream?
about Rose from the Titanic. And I think it was Taco Bell induced.
Right.
Most of your dreams are.
Have you guys ever had those dreams? Apparently this is a real thing. I only thought it was really in movies. Those dreams where you keep thinking, you wake up.
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's like chain dreams.
Yeah.
Where that happened after this dream. Where, like, for the next couple of hours, I was just, like, drifting in and out of consciousness, going in and out of, like, being awake and being in the dream. Kind of like dolphin diving through the ocean.
I've definitely, like, the closest I've ever had to something like that would be just, like, I'm not fully asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can just tell my body is not going into the REM sleep. And so I'm just, like, falling in and out of but I don't really remember anything. And then I like get stressed because I look at the clock and it's like freaking noon, and I'm like, oh my god, I haven't even slept. I feel like garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's very uncomfortable. I don't like doing it.
I remember once in high school, I had a dream where I got up and I did my whole day, and then I went back to bed, and then I woke up.
You woke up and
How
it
do you know
was
that was a
Tuesday
dream?
again.
That might not have been a dream.
That might have just been your day.
No.
Chris went to school 6 days that week.
Well, I'm being a little bit genuine here. How do you know?
Like,
Is it not actually as simple as like what day of the week it was?
no, there was like, yeah, it was just stuff like that that made me realize that was a dream.
Maybe you lost a day.
Maybe.
And you'll never get it back.
What do you think about all these stories about people who live like years and years over the course of a single night in their dreams?
I've only heard one really compelling story about that, and I've definitely talked to you guys about it. It's the guy on Reddit.
Mm-hmm. The lamp story?
Yeah.
Yep. I've heard
And
that
I
one
still,
too.
I don't even know if I truly believe that, but like I said, I find it very compelling, mainly because it's just, oh my god, that's so brutally sad if it is real.
Yeah. I don't think I'd
uh,
want it to happen.
Absolutely not.
In fact, it made me think about if I actually did die in my sleep and what I experienced is what you experience after you die. I was thinking about what would happen if you just kept going higher and higher until you saw Earth from space, and then you just kept going further and further, and you lost where Earth was, and you were just doomed to be this consciousness floating
You're in
around.
heaven now.
No,
Well, those
you're actually
aliens on the
just in
dark side of the
space.
moon would find you for sure.
But the moon's with the Earth. The moon's with the Earth.
They
So
can
that's-
astral project to go get you. They're better at it than you are.
Okay. That would be terrifying if you were just
You're-
lost in space without any way of getting back to humanity.
Cody, you were raptured
Is that right?
He's still
in your
here, though.
dream. In your dream,
must
that's
not have
what
wanted
happened.
him.
You were
Yeah. It's like, oh, how did you get in the line?
They had another fucking return to sender.
Wouldn't that be awesome if the rapture has literally already happened and they just like, oh, all these people suck.
Yep.
We'll try again in like 2,000 years. I don't think it works that way.
It all goes back to that
doesn't?
damn gorilla in 2016.
Yeah. If it weren't for him and his absolute degeneracy, is what I'm going to call it. I blame him. I'm a gorilla blamer. I say put a gun to his head right now again.
That's racist.
They already
You're
did
making
that
it.
though.
I'm saying doing it again.
Oh, I don't think it would help.
I don't think he's fucking dead. I want you.
Hey,
to put
so
a gun-
corners, huh? Let's.
I want you to
Todd,
put a gun
speaking
to
of-
his astral projection.
Speaking of gorillas and Shulk jerking me off, let's talk about corners.
Okay.
So, last time, several corners ago, Chris did a corner there, didn't you, Chris? And it was some pussy ass shit.
I remember
It was
liking
some
that
weak
corner.
ass pussy ass shit that
Remind me
was
what
on
the
that
corner
corner.
was.
What?
What
was
it
the
Capri
corner?
Sun corner?
It was a conspiracy corner.
Yeah. No, it was the Capri Sun corner.
No, I'm talking about the conspiracy one. Several corners ago, he had a conspiracy corner,
Oh, yeah,
and we
the
just kind of
birds.
talked about how birds aren't real. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, I'm gonna upset everybody. Today is my corner. It's my goddamn day. Okay? And I'm here to make sure that we all leave the podcast, everyone who listened to it, everyone who participated in it, feels worse at the end of this hour. Okay?
I'm ready.
Challenge
So-
accepted.
I'm going to
Challenge
talk about
complete.
conspiracy.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about what conspiracy actually is, what it means, right? A lot of people just
Can
throw
you
around
use
the
it in a
word
sentence?
conspiracy. It's the memification of the concept. When people say conspiracy theory, it's almost synonymous with saying like fan theory nowadays.
That doesn't help me with the definition of that word.
I'm getting there, you stupid son of a bitch. Conspiracy is like, it quite literally, when a group of individuals or an individual come together to work toward one specific goal that they all have in mind. It doesn't even necessarily have to be in secret. It is only through, context that it becomes conspiratorial if it is in secret. For example, you could say that the entirety of the US government, the revolution, was a conspiracy. It absolutely was a conspiracy. Several people came together and revolted against the British, and now we're here, right? You could even argue that most things are a conspiracy. Like, the invention of the light bulb was a conspiracy. Like, Thomas Edison obviously invented it, but he didn't work alone. Or he did. I'm not a historian. Regardless.
Generally, we reserve the word for more negative connotations here.
Absolutely. 9/11. And people, like, that's the first one I'm going to hit today. People in the conspiracy world tend to really hate using the term 9/11 because it's part of the brand. Similar to how conspiracy theory has become part of the brand of what it is. They all like to believe, and I have a hard time disagreeing, that the term conspiracy theory, the memification of it, is part of some grand conspiracy. The idea that we are meant to look at these people and deride them for wanting to think a certain way, think there is some greater plan. You must be crazy if you think it's a conspiracy theory that the moon is hollow. But, like, let's really boil that down. Who thinks the moon is hollow?
I do.
Schizophrenics?
Why would a schizophrenic think that?
Because a voice in their head told them that?
So, you're attributing
Fuck, am I schizophrenic?
a line of thinking to a man... you're attributing a line of thinking to an entire group of individuals who believe something. And apparently schizophrenic's, voice in their head is telling them that a group of individuals is trying to convince you of something else. Right?
Yes.
Do you actually believe that, or are you just being a meme?
No, I don't actually believe that, but I understand that is the line of thinking that thought says. Like, you paint conspiratorial people in a negative light, so then anyone who isn't conspiracy oriented
I fucking hate Tory.
will automatically disregard any such claims.
I mean, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
That's the dream, is that I suppose people like Bill Cooper don't get to exist. I'm not defending Bill Cooper. I think he was an absolute garbage person. If you don't know, Bill Cooper was a famous, or I guess notorious, conspiracist. Back in like the 90s and 80s, maybe. And he was actually killed on his property by a pair of cops. Now, people hear that and they're like, huh? Yeah, what? But I hear that, and like, if you know the whole story, he was like dodging his taxes, and he shot first, apparently, and I think he did shoot the cop in the face, but the cop lived. And people hear that, and they're like, huh? But like, bro, sometimes you just don't pay taxes. Sometimes you're like, stand my ground, and then two cops shoot you because you shot first.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was some grand conspiracy that he was put down, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel that people seem to attach some sort of meaning to it. As if he was like so close. He was zooming right in. He was so close to figuring out the grand truth. But what does that even mean?
Well, I think the big thing here, in the way that most conspiracy theorists think, is that everything is part of the plan. There are no coincidences or anything like that. It's all connected.
I think that's, I don't know if I'd say most, but absolutely there are a contingent of people who, it reminds me of religion in a lot of ways. I don't want to I don't want to step on any toes. But it reminds me of religion in a way that's like, there is no way, they refuse to believe that the world is that simple and random. In its simplicity and complexity, it's just random. It has to be some grand design. There's no way this would have happened the way it did randomly.
How could one see the infinite complexity of the clockwork of the universe and not believe in a clockmaker?
And I'm raising my hand, this guy, because sometimes it do just be like that, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think that's what the quote-unquote spooky they want you to think. They want you to see the average conspiracy theorist as this guy who's like, oh, I get to make these connections. They want you to see Pepe Silvia. But in reality, I think most conspiracy theorists are probably guys like me. And I do not self-identify as a conspiracy theorist. Really want to hammer that home. But I think most of them are just people like me who have quite a lot of free time to think about stuff, and then they kind of just latch on to a certain thing, and they're like, huh, that's a bit weird. Doesn't it make a lot of sense that this and this? Huh. And the story is this, though. And I think that's as far as it goes, but the very, very loud minority, I feel, is the hollow moon. Bigfoot is an interdimensional creature that's turning our frogs gay. You know, that kind of shit.
Right.
But here's the really scary thing. What if those people aren't even real?
Oh, the psyop?
What if it's all just like imagine an internet forum. I was thinking about this the other day, and it actually is scary to me. Imagine an internet forum, and this almost certainly, I feel, has happened at one point in history. It probably happens regularly, I feel, where they're all just talking, a bunch of normal people are talking about, oh man, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, blah, blah, blah. But then one person injects, like, some manner of, like, a layer of what they will call the truth into the story, but then truth plus extra. You know what I'm talking about? Where it just makes it that little bit, like, you're going in the right direction, but they're turning you down the left turnpike.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep following that line, it's just convincing enough that you will keep following that line, and now you've ended up somewhere totally different that has no bearing on anything. And now we are talking about that instead of Jeffrey Epstein killing himself, like a year down the road.
I think,
Right.
so I was actually talking with another group of friends about this recently, about how these kind of things grow and evolve. And I think it kind of touches on what you said there, where it always starts with a grain of truth.
Yeah.
There's been, I hesitate to call it a meme because people actually believe it now, but there's been a meme going around for the past year or so that Helen Keller didn't exist. And that's like peak of the conspiracy theory is she didn't exist at all. But then there are layers to it where people are like, well, she actually wasn't deaf and blind, and she was only pretending to be deaf and blind for clout.
It reminds
And
me of
then-
that gorilla. Not that gorilla, the other gorilla. The one that was doing signs.
Coco. Yeah.
Coco.
Actually, yeah, all of it was basically nonsense. But with the thing with Helen Keller is, like, obviously Anne Sullivan was a very important figure in her life and instrumental in her success and recognition. And Helen Keller wrote quite a few books during her lifetime. And people hear that and they hear about the situation that Helen Keller was in, and they're like, there's no way this coincidence could actually happen. Nobody who is deaf and blind could actually become as famous as she could. And the truth is probably, actually, one person in human history, probably could have become famous in this condition. One person out of the billions that have been around? Okay. But people see this and they're like, no, it couldn't have happened. And that's not unjustifiable to think, I suppose, because it is a pretty incredible situation. But then you look at
the movie's literally called The Miracle
Worker. The books
Worker.
she wrote, and obviously Anne Sullivan had a big part in making those books the way they were, and how Anne Sullivan was like heavily editing them and asking Helen Keller to revise them, and went through multiple iterations and additions.
How, though?
And all of that is true, as far as I know. I wasn't there. And all of that is true as far as I know. But then people are like, well, if Anne Sullivan was so crucial in the editing and revising of these books, it's a much smaller step to take to just say, maybe she just wrote the books and Helen Keller got the credit. And then and then once you accept that, it becomes like a snowball that continues to roll and roll until you're like, actually, Helen Keller wasn't even deaf or blind, or maybe she wasn't even real. She was just
and also
faking it.
She made up the moon.
She actually was the guy who saw the alien moon base. She was astral projecting into the future into Ingo Swann.
Incredible.
That's how conspiracy theories evolve.
Firm stance. Helen Keller was alive. She lived, and she actually was deaf and blind, and actually did all those wonderful things. That's Scott's lock of the week.
Thank you for being so brave to commit to that.
But seriously though, of course, at one point in our lives, I'm sure we've all heard the retelling of the story of when it like finally clicked for her. Like, holy shit, that's so beautiful and wonderful. When just in conspiratorially her own words, he had her hands under the water and finally was just like, oh, I get it. Finally, something real and tangible has been linked to a concept in my mind. Mm-hmm. I know what the symbol that she's putting into my hand means. It means this. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. And it makes me so happy for how brave this little girl was to keep trying.
I'll take that even further. She has writings where she talks about how she didn't even consider herself like an entity until she was conscious. She said for several years of her childhood, she just had like an animalistic mind where she just had extremely deprived but sensations of the world around her that she couldn't comprehend, she couldn't see, she couldn't hear. But when Anne Sullivan taught her like the concept of I and me, she's like, oh, I am a human. I'm not just this consciousness floating around in darkness. And that's equally as beautiful.
It's so heartbreaking and inspirational to think about Helen Keller. But obviously, we all know the truth about her. We all know the truth.
Which was?
Scott's Lock of the Week. To really hammer home what I was thinking about, I was going on a bit of a tangent with Helen Keller there. Or maybe someone else did? I don't remember.
Is Cody a government plant?
Maybe. Government
they called
contract.
People like you a fruit. Damn it, that's another reference.
Count it. So, like, in real time, like, right now as we're speaking and recording this podcast, there is a genocide occurring.
That's your
and
opinion.
The really scary thing about it is
I don't know how much in detail we want to go. I genuinely know nothing about this.
So Israel and Palestine, huh? Tale as old as time. Or at least a tale as old as, like, 1912.
Yep.
They've been going at it.
Real quick. Chris, you know how we have to request a manual review to get remonetized every week? I wouldn't
course.
bother this week.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's also kind of what I'm going to talk about in this episode. Because the whole thing that spurred this on is, I've talked with you guys about this before. I'm a very fervent supporter of free speech. And obviously, it's not quite a one-to-one comparison. I don't feel censored by YouTube or anything. It's not like they're taking the videos down, but they are heavily incentivizing you to just not talk about anything that might be touchy. I can't say the word pedophile or suicide or murder or kill, even though none of those words mean anything without context. They're just noises. And even in context, why does that automatically make the context negative and bad when I say those words? On that note, genocide, huh? So Israel really is trying to get Palestine, and they're employing a very archaic and horrible tactic in this war they're unleashing upon Palestine, which is something that the goddamn Nazis did. Which is just, let's bomb civilians until they're like, actually, you know what? Could the government please just concede here? We'll just leave. All of our children are dying. But historically, that never fucking works. The same thing happened with the Nazis in London, the bombing raids, and like, very famously, the people in London were like, we will never, bend our backs, I don't care what underhanded tactics you use, we're not going to beg our government to concede.
We'll fight them on the airstrips, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them in the fields.
Which is tragic in and of itself. But that was 80 years ago. This is happening today. And I don't know what to do. I feel sick to my stomach because humans are a social animal, right? But, man, I don't think we're supposed to be this social. I'm not supposed to know what's happening around the world. I think we're a communal animal. Socialism, huh? And it's rough, knowing that there's nothing I can do. There are literal children and people who love each other and are seeing each other die for, like, some square miles. And it's infuriating. And this, I believe, is why the crux of so many fucking conspiracy theories is anti-Zionistic. And I really want to hammer home that anti-Zionism does not mean anti-Judaism. Anti-Zionism is specifically just let's give the Jews a country.
Mm-hmm.
I am gonna leave my own personal, views about all of this shit. No, fuck it. What am I talking about? Of course. The whole idea of Zionism was flawed to begin with. Like, most of the people who wanted to give a country, to make a country for Jewish individuals, just said that because, there's no way that Jewish people will ever emulsify into society. It's like oil and water. There is no way the twain shall ever mix. And so we might as well give these disgusting pieces of garbage their own country. And I'm just like, whoa! How about we just like, what are you talking about? Look, America is just the perfect fucking image of exactly this. Of just all these, like, different cultures coming together and not necessarily working so well all the time, but we're here, we're alive, we're living. Like, I know so many different bits of culture just because I live in America. I've never even left America. There's this, like, it's getting a little bit pro-American for a second. There's this, what's the word I'm looking for? Viewpoint that people have of Americans outside of America, where, and I really think it's super wrong, this idea of the uncultured American pig type. But I think because of the nature of what America is, this grand experiment, because of the nature of what it is, we have quite a lot more culture than any average individual in any other country. But now, because the world is becoming more global, because it's becoming more, I guess, communal, despite how large it is, all of these other countries seem to be like playing catch up. And a lot of the problems that all the world is having is because America, at the very least, I'm not going to say it was a good pace, but it was a much slower pace than what the rest of the world is having to deal with. Suddenly, I can just, like in Brazil, people in Brazil only had to interact with other people from Brazil, right? But now I can go on Facebook and see what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And that's rough for them. But I feel like Americans are just better at it. We've had a lot longer of a time to just grow used to, oh, I see you, you're different than me. And also, I guess that doesn't really matter because you just look different and that's about it. See what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, and I'm going to say the Black Lives Matter movement.
What about it?
What I'm saying is, like, we have all these different cultures, but, I mean, clearly it doesn't go great for us. In quite a few different regards, man.
But I don't think that's a problem with the average American citizen. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect. Like, clearly. But people don't give an American enough credit. They just have this image of, like I said, this uncultured person, but an average American, especially on the East Coast, and I guess the coastal Americans especially, are just surrounded by people of all different creeds and colors. Right? Like New York is just all kinds of people. A New Yorker is like the quintessential, what I'm talking about, American. And they can be anything because they are still an individual. They can have their own biases and their own, preconceived notions. But I think people don't get that. People just see, uncultured American swine likes American cheese and going to McDonald's. Regardless, I don't know what this has to do with anything. Because the world is so much bigger now, because I can just look at Twitter and see the fucking Prime Minister of Israel blatantly lying about committing genocide, or like that is the scariest part of conspiracy, to me, is when it's not even done well. Like, what's his name? Netanyahu just goes on to Twitter and is like, oh, that guy, it sure is a shame that Palestinian-American reporter got assassinated. We do have confirmed reports that it was Palestinian shooters, though. And we just straight up have a fucking video of her getting her head blown off by an Israeli sniper. And he's just like, nope, Palestinian. It was definitely Palestinians. We're going to keep bombing this hospital because, underneath this hospital, let me tell you, just a whole network of terrorists. There's a whole goddamn network of tunnel systems and terrorism down there. If we keep bombing it, they'll go into those tunnels and we'll get the hospital. And like that video, the video of the Israeli, the IDF guy, in the basement, just pointing at what is so obviously a calendar. And he's like, this is like a check-in sheet. This is literally what it says. This is like a check-in sheet for all the terrorists, and the terrorists will sign their name. And he's just pointing in a calendar. It's just like, in Arabic, says the different days of the week. And he's like, these are the terrorist names. And it's just so frightening that it's working for some people. And they see that stuff, and they're like, see, I'm glad the IDF is committing genocide against this group of innocent people. And it's rough. That's the scariest part of conspiracy to me, is when it doesn't even matter if it's done well or not. It matters to me, I guess. I can see that and be like, oh my... And even I have to admit, I don't know the full truth. Of course I don't. How could I? How could anyone? Other than the people perpetrating it. But I digress.
That was a lot to digress.
Don't want to make any jokes, huh?
That was a lot to digress.
It's gonna be a rough episode.
What joke can I make there?
Gonna be a rough episode.
What can What do you want me to do? You want me to fucking like dance around it, like poke at people dying?
No,
Like-
I really don't. I just don't know what else I can do. I have no idea what I can do. I am a poor, useless piece of garbage, and there's nothing I can do to help all of those innocent people who are getting murdered, and like lawfully so.
There's a protest downtown Sunday, I believe.
Let me tell you, man, it doesn't matter how loud I yell. Uncle Joe isn't gonna do shit. Even though historically, how many times throughout history has the president been like, okay, Israel, how about you simmer down? And they're like, okay, I'm sorry. They just pull on the leash, and Israel's like, okay, I'm sorry, boss. Joe's not gonna do that. Back in the 80s, Joe said the exact opposite sentiment. I think it was Reagan who pulled the leash, and Israel was like, okay, I'll back down. And Uncle Joe's like, we should have just let him off of it. We should just let him go, get it over with.
Do you think that would be a better outcome?
I mean, 40 years ago, maybe.
Do you think Joe is a Zionist?
I think all of America is the American government, which is to say, Joe is absolutely a Zionist. We are so pro-Israel that there's what are we talking about?
How do I say this? I don't have a
Hey, maybe we should save you, okay? How about you message it to me, and I'll say it flat out.
Okay. Okay. I don't mean this with any malice or hatred. It's just pure ignorance of the situation. But why do we care about Israel?
So oh, you okay?
I know. So, from a religious standpoint, right? The belief is that there's a subsect of Christianity that believes that we should help bring about the end of the world, and a part of that is a belief that the temple in Jerusalem needs to be rebuilt. And so a part of Zionism is to do that.
Okay.
And you think that you think the American government is actively
just gonna
supporting
that would be
notion?
that would be one conspiracy.
Just gonna
about
cut
it.
you off right
Well,
there because that's a really goofy answer, and I
Yep,
don't think that's
that-
what I was looking for.
That didn't do anything for me.
So for me, I see it as sunken cost fallacy. We've put so much, if we keep, I keep saying we because I've been sheep dipped. Funny joke, he said sheep dip because it's such a fucking stupid term. We have all been collectively sheep dipped into just being patriotic and supporting what Uncle fucking Joe says. But I think it's sunken cost. If it pays off in the end, we have our basically own vassal state that we can it just does what we say.
Do you think Israel is that vassal state?
If it
'Cause
pays off.
It seems like they're getting the better end of this deal.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're a first world country, right? In the colloquial sense of that term, they're a rich nation. They're a democracy.
Yeah.
Why do they need all of this foreign aid?
Because they're currently committing genocide. And it turns out not a lot of people like that look. But if the US is like, no, all right, they're doing okay, they're doing God's work, then what are we going to say? No? We going to start a world war over this bullshit? And the answer is yes. Yes, we should. Not start a world war, but people should just be like, hey, how about you stop? Because I think if we call America's bluff, they'll be like, okay, all right, stop it, Israel. It was a flawed situation from the get-go. Because as far as I understand it, I might be totally off base on this. Basically, the United Kingdom was at war with Turkey back in the 1910s.
Yep. World War I.
And
The Ottoman Empire.
they told Palestine, or whatever it was at the time, hey, if you revolt against the people who control you, aka Turkey right now, it will help us win, and after we win and beat Turkey and make them surrender, we will give you your own independence. That's happened so many times throughout history, but then as has happened as so many times throughout history, they just lied. And after Turkey lost, there was like, oh, so we're going to put all the Jewish people here. We're displacing all of you Palestinians. And they're like, but we live here. And like the Zionism movement at the time, like the catchphrase, the tagline was a nation without a people and a people without a nation. How could it go better? But all the Palestinians were like, what do you mean? I live here. And now we're here. Now we're 112 years after that.
I don't know if this is apocryphal, but there is a funny anecdote that I heard about some of the talk that was going on in the British Parliament around this time, where they were like, I mean, these conspiracy theories go back all the way back then, 100 years ago. It goes back even further. But people were like, so, like, the Jews don't control the world. Like, obviously, they don't, right? But if they did, we'd want to be on their side, right? So we give them Palestine?
I'm certain that a lot of people thought that way. And I think people...
I'll tag in right there. Let me be clear. That's not me expressing my opinion on the situation.
Absolutely not.
That's a historical, possibly apocryphal anecdote.
I really don't think that the world has any necessary bias, especially no positive bias, for a specific race or belief in people. Obviously, in a perfect world, that would absolutely be true. Unfortunately, that's not completely true. Like, obviously, people are discriminated against. I don't know how real it is to say that people... What's the opposite of discrimination?
Acceptance?
I guess acceptance is the opposite, but what is positive discrimination?
I think that's like objectivism, right?
Sure. I'm not sure how real it is that someone would benefit from being a specific belief or race. Surely, obviously, in certain scenarios that'll be the case, but I don't think that, like, I've never really jibed with the idea of Jews run the world just because they're Jewish. Like, oh, you succeeded, you'll have all this money because you're Jewish. Of course that's not the case. Of course that's not the case.
Please don't let that be the case.
And it's that line of thinking that I think people, like, they start denying some things that definitely happened. So let's move on from that, right?
Okay. Real quick, just to bring a little bit of levity to the situation, is it anti-Semitic to believe that the Jews do control the world, but you're actually just kind of cool with that, too?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Like, certainly, you know, it'd be silly to say that a lot of Jewish individuals are in places of power. It would be silly not to say that, I should say.
Sure. And maybe if you did some digging and looking at some of the numbers, maybe there was a bit of an overrepresentation based on demographic percentages.
Yeah.
Just asking for a friend.
Regardless, let's move on to a less frightening and outwardly just so brutally saddening conspiracy to this next one. The idea, it's not really an idea, it's all but just true. It's another one of those examples of just conspiracy being done so poorly that it's scary. And it doesn't matter how poorly it was done. BlackRock Holdings. Y'all familiar?
Yes.
No.
They are the
Vaguely.
largest fiduciary company in the world. They arguably control the most amount of money in the world. Trillions of dollars I'm talking here.
Like $18 trillion.
It's pretty much verifiable that some of BlackRock Holdings' money funded the war on Ukraine. And that's rough, but whatever. Who am I to say, where your money goes? And
they've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies.
Yeah, like
they're selling the bullets and the bandages.
Yeah, that's the rough part. So the rough part is it's a real life Hegelian dialectic. So BlackRock, after the whole Ukraine thing starts going down, BlackRock like comes out, oh, the CEO, he's like, oh, we're going to start a new banking system or whatever, a new holding in Ukraine to help. We're going to donate a bunch of charity that he caused. He caused a lot of the suffering in the Ukraine. Not like directly, of course. The money he is in control of caused quite a great deal of suffering in the Ukraine. And now here he is pretending as if he wasn't in control of that money. What money? Here's a bank. And on top of that, he's just going to make more money by doing this. And what can we do? This man is just becoming richer and richer. I don't even know his fucking name. Like, he is doing it right. He's not doing it the Elon Musk way, which is like everybody knows who Elon Musk is. This man, when I say right, I mean in the most efficient and evil way possible. There's this, that's less of a conspiracy, this idea that there are actually quite a lot more supremely rich people than we know of. The ones we hear about are Bill Gates and the Waltons and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
The Koch brothers.
And like, also people give a lot of credit to like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk for being so rich or whatever. I think Elon's the top right now. I think him and some other guy bounce around each other a lot.
Jeff Bezos? I
don't know. Maybe. But if you combined all the Waltons holdings are with all like the 6 kids, if you just combined all theirs, they eclipse Elon Musk. I don't know why you would do that. I'm just saying they all got their fortune from Walmart. And Elon Musk got his fortune from his own companies, of course. All I'm saying is Walmart alone has made the Waltons the richest people.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying Walmart deserves a lot more credit than it gets. Thank you, Walmart, for the commodification of my fucking time, Walmart. Thank you. Regardless. So BlackRock. And I think what's really scary about about BlackRock is, and it's by design, I feel, I don't think most people even know who the fuck they are.
Yeah.
I don't think most people have even heard the name BlackRock.
But I guarantee you've heard about all the companies that they own majority holdings in.
For sure.
Like,
Spoiler, all of them.
He's not even exaggerating.
Like, they own majority stakes in, like, Procter & Gamble and Pepsi Lay's and Coca-Cola and, you know, everything. Just go down the aisle of your supermarket, pick up any product, and there's, like, a very high % chance that BlackRock is a majority holding company in their parent company.
And a bunch of food companies, that doesn't sound so bad. But then you start saying Northrop Grumman, Boeing, goddamn, what's that other one? Lockheed Martin. And then you're like,
Dynamics.
Who actually has the biggest military? So, all this to say,
what's frustrating about that is people, again, this is going down rabbit holes. And once you start seeing this stuff, you start asking more and more questions. And it's like, I don't like the answers I'm getting. Because you look at a supermarket and you see all these different products, and you're like, oh, I must have choice. There must be competition here. When in reality, all of these different manufacturers are all owned by the same company.
The same people, even.
Mm-hmm. And any amount of, like, competition or product rivalry you see, it's all just marketing.
Manufacturing.
When KFC and Popeye, you see their little Twitter accounts beefing online, it doesn't matter because they're owned by the same company. And any side of this product war you choose, somebody is making money regardless. It doesn't matter where you put your money, you're always giving it to the same people.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. What a great episode.
And the problem, and Scott, this is why I think conspiracy theories are getting more and more prevalent these days, is because people have so much access to information, and people are getting bad at conspirating because they see Netanyahu on TV saying these things, and they're like, no, that's wrong. But then they see all the politicians and all the media just saying it back, and they're like, this is really weird. Why is everybody being so soft on Israel? And then you start taking that further and further, and it's like, oh, it's because Jews control the world, and it's Jews that are puppeting all of these different organizations and institutions. That's the conspiracy theory. That's the conspiracy.
Another weird thing with just the presentation of the whole, I thought we moved on from this, the whole shit in Israel, is it's like we're getting the story in a weird order. Like, we can see live on Twitter people taking video of, like, IDF people using civilians as human shields. And we're like, huh, that seems pretty fucked. And then, like, Netanyahu is like, oh, yes, we saw some Palestinian armed people. They were doing some horrible shit with, you couldn't believe it. They were using civilians as human shields. And I'm just like, what? But I saw, what do you mean? And then everybody's like, I can't believe these Palestinians. And I'm just like, what in the fuck is happening? What is going on?
And then, like, another one that's probably getting a lot of buzz right now is you look at Ukraine and Russia, and then you recognize that BlackRock is funding both sides of the war, and you're like, wait, didn't my crazy uncle mention that all modern wars are caused by bankers funding both sides of the conflict to enrich themselves and destroy the world?
And the great irony in that is that's what deniers biggest argument against the idea of a next world war is we have a global economy, we can't start a new war. But my pushback on that is, we have a global economy. I think that's why there's going to be another world war, to make more money.
If you look historically, if you look at the reasons war broke out, alliances, economics, money very rarely factor into why people go to war. Now, granted, things have been very different in that regard post World War II, and having the global order that we have right now. But historically, people losing money on the stock market isn't why people decide not to go to war. And in actuality, with the size of the military-industrial complex, it's probably much more economical than people think to go to war.
Well, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, I think we saw that, like, in real time with Operation Desert Storm. It was like a 24-hour offensive or whatever. That's probably exaggerating. But it was a very short offensive. And I think the prices boomed that week, especially for oil.
My stocks have been going up.
Finally, Disney coming around.
Stocks?
I do have stocks. Disney's still down, but I have other ones.
Chris, this is for the podcast listeners out there. Chris bought fucking Disney stock after Endgame came out.
I was like, man, I'm going to ride this high.
That high did not last long, my guy.
Record losses this past year.
After every single movie,
it's just getting lower and lower.
I'm just like, they announce a project.
You might as well just hold on, man. How much? Do me a favor, Chris. Tell me, how much did each stock cost?
How
much was one stock?
You can shut up. Here's the thing about it, right? They announce a project and it doesn't go up or down. It stays the same. And then the project comes out and then it tanks.
Yeah.
Every time.
Honestly, buy the dip. You gotta buy the dip, Chris.
You gotta invest more. That's what Cody's saying. Just put more in. It'll come back around.
Now's the time to buy, dude.
The market always goes up.
Think about
Now's
this.
the time
This is before Deadpool, whatever number it is. Deadpool 2, 3.
4?
3.
This is before Deadpool 3 comes out. You hedge your bet. Deadpool 3 is going to be a massive hit. You telling me it's not going to just rake in change? At least $1 billion coming from that movie, right? You got Huey Jackman. You got, what, the other one? What's his name?
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds reprising their roles in the MCU.
And Wolverine is in his classic comic book suit.
Yeah, baby.
Is
Comic
anybody
bitch?
actually excited about that?
No.
I am.
Seeing Wolverine in a yellow costume.
I'm not.
This
Are
is
you gonna judge me?
honestly, this makes me think about conspiracy theories. It's like,
Oh.
who are these people who are like, yes, he's wearing yellow.
Yeah!
I feel like my voice is.
It makes me think about the dead internet.
What a
theory,
waveform.
where like 90% of the internet is actually not human interaction. It's just AI generated like bots and spam accounts
I always smile at that
talking to each other.
because it's like the virtual version of solipsism. It's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
like the saddest version of solipsism.
It's like, oh, it's just me on here. Everything else is fake.
Everything out in the real world, that's all very real. But here in this Discord call, it's just me and a bunch of AI.
Oh,
John, what were you going to
the
say?
yellow suit.
What, huh? You are?
Yeah.
It's gonna remind me of the cartoon. I'm gonna be happy.
Oh, that's great that it reminds you of the cartoon, Cress, because they're rebooting X-Men, the animated series, into X-Men 97
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
on
Why?
Disney Plus. Watch it now.
Oh, get your stock now.
It's weird, right? Like, how many episodes are going to be in that, like a season of that show?
I don't know, man.
Somebody tell
I
me.
couldn't tell you.
Somebody tell John.
No. You can't force me into
You
this.
tell me now, or I'm going to start talking about genocide again.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I don't.
Ain't nobody stopping you.
We've moved on from it.
We weren't an X-Men, the animated series household. It's the classic meme.
Yeah.
Born too late to like X-Men, the animated series.
Classic
Born
meme.
too early to
Like
be a child
the
and
animated.
like X-Men 97.
I just watched everything when I was a kid. I've talked about this on the podcast. I think how
Born in like 96?
who me
95.
Oh.
Yep.
when I was a kid, I didn't even know the difference between Marvel and DC. I used to get annoyed when, like, because Spider-Man had all his friends come on to his show. I'm like, why doesn't goddamn Batman go hang out with Spider-Man?
Yeah, yep.
That's so adorable.
But
That's
then,
such a
like,
cute fucking
goddamn
mindset.
Superman went to hang out with Batman, and I'm like, okay, yeah, he finally has some friends, and it sucked dick. Like, I remember, I've talked about this so often with you guys. I don't know if it was on the podcast. How that was like the first exposure I ever had to Superman, and it was so sour that I think it has carried into me just disliking him for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Where he goes into that episode, and he's like, oh, look at me, I'm Superman. And the thing I loved about Batman was, first off, the thing that everybody loves about him, he's just a guy. Like, the way he beats his bad guys who are so much more capable in one area than he is, and that's what they lean on, is he's just more capable in the other area to outwit them. And so when Bane,
I'm gonna push back on that, actually.
oh,
He's not just a guy. Genetically, he is like 99.9 percentile in physicality, intellect, everything.
Whatever.
He's not just
he doesn't have super
average
strength.
Joe.
He doesn't shoot lasers out of his eyes.
He doesn't have super strength, but he's stronger than 99% of the human race.
Regardless, when Batman is fighting Bane, he can't just rely on his stronger than 99% of the human race, because Bane's way stronger. He has to outwit him in some way. Usually, they depict him like cutting the stupid hoses on his mask or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I just didn't fucking get it, Bane was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you, Batman," and Superman shows up, and like for some reason, they dress Superman up as Batman and trick Bane into thinking that Superman is Batman, and then like that the result of this ruse is Superman beats the shit out of Bane. And so I'm like, why did we go to this extra step? What is happening? Why didn't
just
Superman
wanted to
just
play
punch him to death?
He just wanted to play a prank on him.
I guess.
At any point, did Superman reveal that he was Superman?
Well, like there was like that ironic thing where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna crush the bat," and he gets him really good, and he's like, "Oh, I finally got you, Batman," and then he's just like, "Huh, you thought, bitch, you thought," and he like punches him in the grundle or something. I see that as a kid, and I'm like, this isn't fun. Like, this isn't them tricking Bane in like some creative way. This is cruel. Like they're just pretending.
Wow.
I can't. Can you imagine being Bane?
Bane's a fucking villain, dude. Who gives a
Imagine
shit?
being Bane in that scenario. You're like, oh yeah, I finally get to have the I'm his arch nemesis. I get to fight Batman. Oh, I really got him. I got him really good. Is he okay? And then your arms get broken.
I
Batman's
can't
over
believe
here,
you
like-
have sympathy for Bane here.
I don't.
After
Don't.
everything that you just no, you don't get to take it back now.
It's called
After
Yes and.
everything you just spewed about what's going on in the fucking Middle East. And then you're like, I feel bad for Bane because he had to fight Superman.
Yeah.
And he thought he was fighting Batman.
I think there's a thread here. Scott has, throughout this podcast, shown sympathy for the bad guys
Wow.
and the enemy.
Wow.
That's
You're
a good
right.
point.
That's spoken like a
That's a
true
good point.
patriot.
Hell
And
yeah.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Hey, if
would you like a
have,
rebuttal of that?
you know what this episode was? Bait. If you disagree with any of the things any of us have said, why don't you leave a comment about it?
I hope we get a lot of engagement on this
You
one.
know what? You should subscribe just in case we say something else you find inflammatory, so you can comment on that.
Yeah,
too.
I'm going to need you there to keep me in check.
Is this the most sincere rage bait ever made?
Oh, maybe that, if this does well, could we pivot?
Chris, I want you to draw the outline of a country on fire
What country?
for the thumbnail.
What country, Joe?
Whichever country he wants to see on fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Canada's had it for too good for too long.
And like, I want the...
You know,
Oh, no.
I was thinking Belize. All people talk about is, oh, Belize is this, Belize that. You know what? How about you Belize it in the dust, huh? Pokemon go to the
Stop
polls.
believing.
I could draw the island of Capri on fire.
Will people recognize it?
No,
I wouldn't.
No.
It's a
Not
shame
if
we
they're-
went to the
not
very
if-
end of the podcast, and then Canada and Belize started catching strays.
Yeah. You know, I agree with Chris though. They've had it too good for too long.
I will take any amount of time out of my day to belittle Canada
Why?
That's rough.
because it's Canada.
That's a stupid answer. Give me something more.
It's a stupid
know what they
premise,
did.
John.
They gave
Yeah.
Canadian geese to the world. That's their form of terrorism.
They also
They
gave
call-
us Canadian bacon, which
It's
you
just
can't
ham.
have, Chris.
It's
Is
just
that
ham.
why you hate Canada? Because you can't have their bacon?
What's so great about the Great White North? I don't know. I don't see it.
Seems pretty
Got
cool.
all
It
them-
stands. It stands for everything you aren't.
We got all them frostbacks coming over the border illegally,
Jesus.
taking our
my
jobs.
God.
Nope, we can't. We can't. We close it. We close it. We're done.
I'm just
We're done.
imagining like a bunch of snowmen, like
Chris curled the
Frosties,
fastest at this.
in the darkest timeline is, oh, we will build a great wall, and it's just a bunch of border patrol officers with flamethrowers melting snow people.
Jesus.
There we were.
There's like 8 snowmen standing still, and then somebody just like light them up, and you see one. You see one fucking pick up the bottom fucking snowball and just start running.